The King of Maleka by H. de Vere Stacpoole. First, Connacht had started in life with a fine, open, believing disposition, and with that disposition for his chief asset, he had entered the world of business. At 30, he had lost nearly everything but his heart, yet it was stolen from him, also, by one Mary Bateman of Boston, a quiet-looking little woman endowed with common sense, a few $1,000s, and a taste for travel. It was this taste, combined with a slight weakness of the lungs, that induced Connacht to go into the Pacific trade, also a legacy, from an English relation, amounting to some £2,000 odd, which enabled him to make the new start in business without calling on his wife's capital. Dobré of San Francisco gave him the pitch. Connacht had the qualities of his defects. Men robbed him, but they liked him. Men are queer things. Dobré, in business, was a very tough person indeed, quite without any finer feelings, and never giving a cent or a chance away. Yet, taking a liking to Connacht, he gave him a house, a go-down, and the chance of success on this island, by name of Maleca, for nothing. "I had a station there up to 6 months ago," said Dobré, "but I'm getting rid of my copra interests. You can have the house, charter a schooner, and fill up with trade and go down there. It's a good climate and will suit your wife. You won't make a fortune, but you won't do badly if you stick to your guns and don't let the Kanakas get the weather gauge on you. There's only one man there. Seedbaum is his name. He's a tough customer by all accounts, but there's copra enough for two. I know a schooner you can have, the Golden Gleam. She's owned by old Tom Bowlby. I've got a fellow at a station on Tomasu that's 150 miles west of Maleka. There's a cargo waiting shipment there. Bowlby can drop you and your stuff at Maleka, then pick up my cargo at the other place. You won't have your copra ready for some months, and you can make arrangements with him to come back for it. You might make arrangements to work in future with Bowlby. He's a straight man. You might work with him as partner." It was easy to be seen that Dobré was not only giving things away, but going out of his course to make things smooth. Connacht felt glowingly thankful. "It's more than good of you," said he, "but it seems to me you will lose over this, for a location like that is worth money." "So are cigars," said Dobré, "but if I give a box of cigars to a friend, he doesn't complain that the gift is worth money." And money," continued this money grubber. "It's worth nothing but the fun of making it. Well, will you take your cigars, or shall I give the box to someone else?" Connacht said no more. In 3 weeks' time, the Golden Gleam, which was lying at the wharves, had taken her cargo of all the multitudinous things that go by the name of trade, and one bright morning, tacking against the wind from the sea, she left the Golden Gate behind her. Mrs. Connacht stood on deck, watching bald Tamalpais across the blue, scudding sea of the wake. When you go to the Pacific Islands, you die to all the things you have known, but you are at least sure that you are going to heaven, if you avoid the low islands. Mrs. Connacht knew the first fact. Down below in her cabin, she carried with her the relics of the life she would no longer lead, down to a well-worn riding habit and a whip that would most likely never touch horse again, but she was not despondent, quite the reverse. You may be seasick in a Pacific schooner, bucking against the swell and bending to the northwest trades. You may be mutinous or angry or tipsy, but despondency, that low fever of cities and civilization, has no place out there. "You ain't feeling the sea, ma'am," said Captain Bowlby, ranging up alongside of her. "No," said she. "I'm a good sailor." "I bet you are," said the captain. Bowlby had a keen eye for ships and women. He had taken a liking to Mrs. Connacht at first sight. She had a steady eye and sure smile that pleased him, and some days later, alone with Ambrose the mate, he voiced his opinions. "Looks like a mouse, don't she? Well, there ain't no mouse about her barring her look. She's one of them quiet sorts that'd back-chat a congressman if she was put to it, or take a lion by the tail if it was making for one of her kids. I bet she's rudder and compass both to Connacht. She and he fit as if they was welded. Did you ever take notice that there's chaps you meet that are only half men till they get a woman that fits them clapped onto them? If she don't fit, they go under the first beam sea they meet. If she do, weather won't hurt them." Ambrose concurred. He was a concurring individual, with few opinions of his own on any matters outside his trade. "I reckon you're right," said he, "though I don't know much about women. I never had the time," he finished, apologetically. Dusra. They raised Maleka at 6 o'clock one brilliant morning, and by 9 it had developed before them, mountainous and green, showing, through the glasses, the blowing foliage, torrent traces, and the foam on the barrier reef. To Connaught and his wife there seemed something miraculous in the unfolding of this island from the wastes of the blue and desolate sea. They had pictured this new home often in their minds, but they had pictured nothing like this. It had been waiting for them all their lives, and it seemed to them now that the souls of all the pleasant places they had ever seen or dreamed of were waiting to greet them on that summer-girdled reef. As they passed the break and entered the lagoon, the true island beach of blinding white sand showed its curve lipped by the emerald waters, and through the foliage came glimpses of the white houses of the little town. "Look," said Mrs. Connaught, wide-eyed and drawing deep breaths as if to inhale the strangeness and beauty of the scene before her. "There are people on the beach, natives, and look at the canoes." "There's a boat pushing off," said Connaught, "and a big fellow in a striped suit in her." "That's Seed Balm," said Captain Bowlby. "Wonder what he wants. Coming to inspect. Gin, likely." The anchor fell, waking the echoes of the woods, and the golden gleam, swinging to the tide that was just beginning to steal out of the lagoon, lay with her nose pointing to the beach whilst the boat came alongside and the man in the striped suit scrambled on board. He was a big man, with bulging eyes, a shaved head, and feet encased in worn-out tennis shoes. The suit seemed made of flannelette. Mrs. Connaught, at first sight, took a profound dislike to this individual. Seed Balm, for Seed Balm it was, saluted Bowlby, gave him good day, cast his eye at the strangers and opened up. "I knew you before you made the anchorage," said he. "Dropped in for water, I suppose?" "No, I've water enough till I fetch Tomasu," replied Bowlby. "I've brought some trade." "Trade," said Seedbaum, offering a cigar. "Well, I don't mind taking some prints and knives off you at a reasonable price. I'm full up with canned goods and tobacco, still, at a reasonable figure." "The trade's not mine," said Bowlby, lighting the cigar. "It belongs to the new trader, that gentleman there, Mr. Connaught's his name. Let me make you known. Mr. Connaught, this is Mr. Seedbalm." "Glad to make your acquaintance," said Connaught. Seedbaum, fingering an unlit cigar, stared at Connaught. "Well, this gets me," said he. "Why, Dobry cleared his last man out for good. There's not business enough in this island for two. That's flat. What did he want sending you for?" "He didn't send me," replied Connaught. "Then," said Seedbaum, "what brought you here anyway?" "I think," said Mrs. Connaught, "this ship brought us here. And excuse me, do you own this island?" Seedbaum stared at her, then his glance fell before that quiet, unwavering gaze, and he turned to Bowlby. "Well," said he, "it's none of my affair if the whole continent of the States comes here to find copra, if it's to be found, but it seems to me this is a pretty dry ship." "Come down below," said Bowlby. They went below, and the pop of a beer bottle cork followed upon their descent. "Oh, what a creature," said Mrs. Connaught. "George, why is it that humanity alone produces things like that?" "I don't know," said Connaught, "but I wish humanity had not produced it here." Seedbaum came on deck again, mollified by beer. Despite the set-down he had received, he nodded to the newcomers as he went over the side, and as they watched him being rowed ashore, Bowlby, leaning on the rail, spat into the water and spoke. "I didn't much trouble telling you of that chap on the way out," said Bowlby. "There's no use in meeting troubles halfway, and there's not an island in the Hull Pacific you won't find trouble of some sort in. If you go in for Pacific trading, there's two things you have to face: cockroaches and men. I've kept the old Gleam pretty free of roaches by fumigating, but you can't fumigate islands. If you could, I reckon you'd see more rats with hands and feet taken to the water than's ever been seen since the Ark discharged cargo. Seedbalm'd be one of them, but you have his measure now, and you'll know enough to go careful with him. Wyatt, The last man that was here got on all right with him. You see, they were pretty much of a pair, and it's my belief they were hand in glove, as you might say, but I reckon you won't have much use for a glove like that. Well, I'll get you ashore now to see your house, and I'll help to fix it up for you. We'll begin getting the cargo ashore tomorrow." He ordered a boat to be lowered, and they rowed ashore. Never, not even in dreamland, had Mrs. Connaught experienced anything so strange as that stepping on shore from the bow of the boat, run high and dry on the shelving beach. Never anything like the touch of land after the long, long weeks of seafaring. And the sights, the sounds, the perfumes, all new, belonging to a new life to be lived in a new world. The white houses set in a little garden at the far end of the village pleased her as much as the place. Her house is almost as much as her husband to a woman, for to a woman a house implies so much more than to a man. There are good houses and bad houses, crazy houses exhibiting the folly of their builders in stucco turrets or mad chimney pots, and stupid houses without character or proper sculleries and sinks. The house at Maleka, though small and possessing few rooms, was cheerful and had a pleasant personality of its own, but it did not possess a stick of furniture. Mrs. Connaught, with the prescience of a woman and assisted by the advice of Bowlby, had brought with them from San Francisco articles of furniture not to be obtained in the islands unless at a ruinous cost. Mats, cane chairs, and hammocks could be obtained from the natives. All the same, there had been furniture in the house, and it was gone. Dobry had given them a list of things, and amongst them was an article on which Mrs. Connaught had, womanlike, set her heart. One red cedar chest, 4 foot 6 by 3 foot, was its specification. "But who can have taken them?" said she, as they stood in the empty front room after a tour of inspection. There was crockery-ware, besides, and oh, ever so many things, and Mr. Dobry was so kind. He would not take a penny for them. "You remember, George," he said, "when I give a friend a box of cigars, I don't take the bands off them. Whatever is there you can have. And now there's nothing." "Maybe the Kanakas have taken them," said Bowlby. "Or seed balm," said Connaught. "As like as not," replied the captain. "He seems to look on the blessed place as his. He told me down in the cabin he reckoned he was king of Maleca, and that all the Kanakas jumped to his orders as if he was king. He's got a clutch on the place, there's no denying that, and he manages to keep missionaries away somehow or nother. I'm afraid you're going to have trouble with that chap." "I'm not afraid of him," said Connaught. "I've got a revolver and can use it if worst comes to the worst." "Oh, it's not revolvers I'm thinking of," said the captain. "It's trickery. He'd trick the devil out of his hoofs and then make gelatine of them. Would seed balm? Have no trade dealings with him. Take my advice. Just stick to the Kanakas." "Let's go and ask him, right now, if he knows where the things have gone to," said Mrs. Connaught. "Well, that's not a bad idea," said Bowlby. "He's sure to lie. Anyhow, it'll clear matters." Seedbaum's house was a substantially built coral lime-washed building with a broad veranda in which hung a cage containing a parrot. The garden was neat and well tended, and the whole place had an air of quiet prosperity, neatness and order, as though the better part of the owner's character were here exhibited for the general view. Seedbaum was seated on the veranda, reading a San Francisco paper obtained from Bowlby. Seeing them approach, he rose to greet them. "I've come to ask you about the furniture in our house," said Connaught. "There were quite a lot of things left by the last man, and I have a list of them, but everything has gone, been taken away. Do you know anything of the matter?" "I don't know anything of what you call furniture," said the other. "Wyatt sold me his sticks when he left for $50, and a bad bargain it was." "He sold you them?" "Yes." "But they belonged to Mr. Dobry." "Oh, did they? Well, Dobry will have to dispute that with Wyatt. Wyatt said they were his." "Have you his receipt?" "Lord, no. There was no receipt in the matter. I handed him over the dollars, and he handed me over the rubbish. It was a favor to him." "Was there a cedar wood chest?" asked Mrs. Connaught. "There was. It's in my house now. There. You can see it through the door." Through the open door, which gave a view of the front room, Mrs. Connaught saw the object of her desire. It was a beauty, solid, moth-defying, with brass corners and brass handles. It was hers by all right, and Seedbaum had tricked her out of it. She spoke. "That chest is mine," said she. "Mr. Dobray gave it to me. It was his property, and Mr. Wyatt had no right to sell it." "Well," said Seedbaum, "he's sold it, and if there's any trouble over it, it will be between Dobry and Wyatt was going to Japan, so he said when he left here, so Dobry had better go to Japan and have it out with him." Mrs. Connaught turned. "Come," said she to the others, "there is no use talking any more to this person. I will write to Mr. Dobry." They turned away, and Seedbaum sat down again to read his newspaper. "That's what I said," spoke Bowlby. "Monkey tricks. You see how he's placed. Wyatt's gone Lord knows where, and Pacific Coast law don't run here. The way for you to do is to lay low and fetch him in the eye unexpected somehow, though if you take my advice, you'll give him a wide offing. There's no use in fighting with alligators. Better leave them be. Hello, what's that?" They turned. Seedbaum had come out of the veranda. A passing native had drawn his ire for some reason or another, and the redoubtable Seedbaum was storming at him. Then he kicked the native, and the latter, a big, powerful man, turned and ran. "The coward," said Mrs. Connaught. "I expect that chap ain't a coward," said Bowlby. "He's just feared of Seedbaum. I reckon there's some curious things in nature. I've seen a whole ship's company living in terror of a hazing captain. They could have hove him overboard and swore he fell over, for the afterguard was as set against him as the forecastle, but they didn't. Just let themselves be drived like sheep and kicked like terriers. It's the same with the Kanakas on this island, I expect." "He's got a personal ascendancy over them," said Connaught. "I reckon he's got something like that," said Captain Bowlby. Moondrum. In a week they were settled down, and a few days later, the cargo having been landed and stored, the Golden Gleam took her departure. They went down to the beach to see her off. They watched her topsails vanish beyond the reef, and they returned, feeling very much alone in the world. A good man is warmth and light even to the souls of sinners. Captain Bowlby was illiterate. His language was free. He was not a saint, but he was a good human man right through. The sea turns out characters like this, just as she turns out shells. It is a pity that they have to cling to the ocean and the beaches. The cities want them. "I feel just as if I had lost a near relation," said Mrs. Connaught. "Well, we'll have him back soon," said her husband. "It's up to us now to get the copra to give him a cargo." Next morning the new trader began business by laying out a selection of goods on the veranda of his store. Mrs. Connaught, who knew something of the Polynesian dialects and who had the art of picking up unknown tongues, had already got in touch with the Kanakas. They charmed and pleased her, especially the children, and wherever she went, she was greeted by friendly faces. It seemed to her that the population of this island, leaving out Seedbaum, her husband and herself, consisted entirely of children. Children of different sizes and different ages, but children all the same. Returning that day from a long walk in the woods, she found Connaught smoking a pipe on the veranda of their house. He looked rather depressed. "I can't make it out," said he. "There's no trade doing." "Maybe they don't know you have started in business yet." "Oh, yes, they do. Lots of them have passed and seen the store open. They've turned to look at the goods, and they seemed attracted, but they went on." "Well, give them time," said she. "Look," said Connaught, "there's copra going to Seedbaum's. They're trading with him. Right enough." Mrs. Connaught watched the copra bearers, but said nothing. In her heart she felt that Seedbaum was moving against them by some stealthy means. At first she thought that it might be possible he had worked upon the native mind and induced the Kanakas to put a taboo upon the newcomers, but she dismissed this idea at once. There was no taboo. The Kanakas were not a bit afraid of either her or her husband. On the contrary, there was every evidence of friendliness. "Well," she said that night, when the store was closed for the day without a knife or a stick of tobacco changing hands, "there's nothing to be done till we find out why they are acting so. It's that creature, I am sure. He began by robbing me of my beautiful cedar wood chest, and he's going on to rob you of your chances in business. Well, let him beware. I'm Christian enough not to wish to hurt him, but I'm Christian enough to believe there's a power that punishes the wicked, and he's wicked. I knew him for a wicked man directly he came on board the ship." "He keeps to himself, and that's one good thing," said Connaught, "but I don't see how he can stop the natives from trading with us." "I don't, either, but I know he does," said she. The next day passed without business being done, and the next. "We may as well shut up shop, it seems to me," said Connaught. "How would it be if you spoke to some of these people and asked them what is the matter?" "I've thought of that," said his wife, "and I held off because, I don't know, it seems sort of indelicate to ask people why they don't come to one's store. I'll do it tomorrow morning first thing. One mustn't let one's feelings stand in the way when one's living is concerned." "I wish we had never come here," said he, "for your sake." "Never come here?" she cried. "Why, I wouldn't for the earth have gone anywhere else. I love the place, and I love people. And what are difficulties? Why, difficulties are the main excitement in life. If life wasn't an obstacle race, it would be a very flat affair. George, we have got to beat that man, and I'm going to— you wait and see." He kissed her and blessed her, and they sat down that night to a game of cribbage, seed balm, and the wickedness of the world forgotten. Next morning after breakfast, Mrs. Connaught went out. She passed through the village and onto the beach, brilliant in the morning light, breeze blown and filled with the murmurs of the reef. Some natives were pulling in a net, and she watched them, chatting to them and playing with the children who had come down to secure the little fish. Then she had a talk with a woman who was standing by, a woman dark and straight as an arrow, a woman mild-eyed and with a voice sweet as the sound of running water. Leaving her, Mrs. Connaught passed to a man who was engaged in mending an outrigger of one of the canoes hauled up on the beach. She had a talk with him. Then she returned, walking slowly and thoughtfully to the house, where she found her husband. "George," said she, "I am right. It is that creature. The people hate him, but they are afraid of him. It seems absolutely absurd, but it is so. He holds them in a spell. He kicks them and beats them, but they are not afraid of that. It's just him." "Good Lord," said Connaught, "why on earth don't they rise against him and tell him to go to the devil? He's only one man anyway." "I don't know," said she. "It's a mystery of human nature. He's the tyrant type, and it's always been the same in the world. There's some sort of magnetism in that type that keeps folk under. History is full of that. It's the soft man and the kindly man and the good man that's assassinated, but tyrants seem to go free. He's what he said he was, the king of this place. Well, we must see what we can do to pull him from his throne. I wish there were more whites here." "That's the bother," said Connaught. Next morning they found a basket of fruit on their veranda, a gift from some unknown person. It was as though the Kanakas, afraid to show their sympathy and friendliness openly for the strangers, had done it in this manner. But no one came to trade. That night, 2 chickens, some sweet potatoes, and another basket of fruit were deposited in the same place. "And we can't thank them," said Mrs. Connaught, "but I believe these haven't all come from one person. I think it's everyone here. They all like us. Oh, George, isn't it maddening that we can't have them openly our friends, just because of that beast?" "It is," said George. Now, at 11 o'clock that morning, Mrs. Connaught, seated on the veranda and engaged on some needlework, noticed a little native girl who, pausing at the garden gate and seeming undecided, at last picked up courage, opened the gate, and came towards the house. Connaught was in the house, going over some accounts, when his wife ran into him. "George, come at once," cried she. "Such a dreadful thing. They've risen against Seed Balm, and they are killing him somewhere in the woods, and they want us to go and see." "Good Lord," cried he, "killing him? Want us to go and see? Are they mad?" He picked up his hat and came out on the veranda, where the pretty little native girl was waiting, a flower of the scarlet hibiscus in her hair and calm contentment in her eyes. "I can't quite make out all she says," said Mrs. Connaught, "but I can make out her meaning." "You'd better stay here," said he, "whilst I go. There may be trouble." "I am not afraid," she replied. "Come on. We may be too late." They followed the child. "Tell her to hurry," said Connaught. "She says we need not hurry," replied she. "As far as I can make out, they are only going to kill him. I expect they have him a prisoner somewhere. Well, much as I hate him, I am glad we will be able to save him." "That depends on how the natives take it," said he. The child led them from the road by a path trod by the copra gatherers, a path running through the wonderland of the woods, a green gloom where the soaring palms shot upwards through a twilight roofed with moving shadows and sun sparkles. They reached a glade where a number of natives were seated in a circle. Above them, and swinging by a cord from 2 trees, was hanging a little disc about half the size of a tambourine. The disc was made of cane and so constructed as to leave a small hole in the center. An old native woman seated under the disc was clapping her hands and repeating something that sounded like an incantation. Every pair of eyes in the whole of that assembly was fixed upon the disc. The child whispered something to Mrs. Connaught. Then she turned from the child and whispered to her husband, "It's only witchcraft. That's a soul trap. They are waiting for a fly to pass through the hole in that thing. If it does, then Seedbaum will die." "Good heavens," murmured Connaught, with a half-laugh. "Why, the fellow hasn't any soul. Not enough to furnish out a fly." They watched patiently for 10 minutes. There were plenty of flies. They rested on the little tambourine, crawled round its edge, but not one went through the hole. "Come," whispered Connaught. They withdrew, taking the path back. "It's pathetic," murmured she. "It's damned foolishness," he repeated. "They trade with him, and let him kick them, and then go on with that nonsense. If they refused him copra, they would bring him to his senses quick enough." "Anyhow, they hate him," said she. "Much good that is," he replied. Nangavda. Now it came about that the soul trap, turning out a dead failure, since not a single fly went through the hole, instead of destroying Seedbaum, fixed him on a pedestal more secure than that which he had hitherto occupied. He was indestructible, and the power which he exercised over the native mind threatened to be as indestructible as himself. However, vengeance was coming. Retribution for all the wrongs he had committed, his swindlings, brutalities, and beatings. It came in this wise. One afternoon, Mrs. Connaught, seated on the veranda and reading The Moths of the Limberlost, heard the cries of a child. Right in front of the house, King Seedbaum was beating a native child for some fault or fancied disrespect towards his royal highness, cuffing it and cuffing it, whilst the squeals of the cuffed one affronted the heavens and the ears of all listeners. Now, to touch a child or dog or cat in Mrs. Connaught's presence was to raise a devil. White as death, she rushed into the house, and white as death, she rushed out again. She held her riding whip, a Mexican quirt, lady's size, but horribly efficient in energetic hands. Seedbaum saw her coming, couldn't understand, caught the first lash on his right arm and along his back. He was wearing the pajama suit, and his yell brought the village flocking, and Connaught running from a field where he was laying out some plants. He saw the quirt lashing over Seedbaum's shoulder, across his legs, and across the back, for the king of Maleca was now running, and pursued for 10 yards or so, whilst the quirt got one last blow in. Then he had his wife in his arms, and she was weeping. "Did he touch you?" cried Connaught. "No, it was a child," she gasped. "Beast! Look, he has run into his house." The street was filled with a crowd that all through the beating had remained spellbound. Now it broke up into knots and small parties, all talking together excitedly. Connaught, with his arm around his wife, drew her into the house. She sat down on a couch and laughed and sobbed. She was half hysterical, but not for long. "I couldn't help it," she said. "I would do it again. It's not because of us, but because he was beating a child." "Brute!" said Connaught. "I'll go down now and give him more. I want to have it out with him right now." He turned to the door. She caught him. "No," she cried. "He's had enough. He won't do it again. Listen. What's that?" From away in the direction of Seedbaum's house came a sound like the swarming of angry bees, also shouts. They rushed to the door and saw Seedbaum. Seedbaum with 50 people round him, and every person trying to beat him at the same time. "Good God," said Connaught. "You've taught them the trick. They'll kill him." "He's got away," cried Mrs. Connaught. Seedbaum, breaking from the crowd, was making up the street. The whole village was after him. He passed the Connaughts' house and headed for the woods, where he disappeared. Then his pursuers drew off, and rushing to the house of Connaught, swarmed at the railings, shouting and waving and laughing, whilst Mrs. Connaught interpreted. "They say he'll never come back to the village again," said she, "for they'll kill him if he does, that he'll have to live in the woods. Oh, George, I'm frightened. What will be the end of it all?" The end was a whale ship that came into the lagoon. Seedbaum, living in the woods, and supported by the generosity of the Connaughts, was given notice by the 3 chiefs of the island, Matua, Tamura, and Ratupea, by name, that if he did not go away in the whale ship, he would be killed before the next ship arrived. And he went. He was almost friendly with the Connaughts in return for their food and protection at the last, and as the natives would allow him to take nothing with him, he had to leave everything behind him, including the red cedar wood chest, which thus came back to its rightful owner. He did not even threaten the natives with governmental retribution. He knew he was done and placed out of court by his own conduct. But the thing that always remained with Connaught out of this affair was the fact that a population of active and vigorous people would still have been downtrodden by a merciless tyrant, but for a little quiet, calm-eyed woman who had unconsciously, and just from an uprising of her own spirit, shown them the trick. Spirit, after all, what else is there in the world beside it?